Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's Monday morning. It's the Must Read Alaska show coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska. And we are on Facebook today. And then later on in the day, John Quick, my co-host and trusty vice president of business development, will get this posted to all of our podcast channels, including Spotify and YouTube and Pandora and Google Play and iTunes. Anyway, we have a big show today. I just want to mention that Must Read Alaska, of course, is got a new motto. We're the force for good. And what we try to do is the right thing every day for Alaska and present the conservative side of the news, because it is really, really hard to get conservative side, the conservative opinion in the mainstream media. They're just not covering it. They're not giving it its due. And they certainly, when they do cover it, they cover it really disrespectfully. It's kind of always a sideswipe. So we like to emphasize the conservative point of view. And we really appreciate you, our readers, our listeners, our viewers, for coming alongside us to be a force of good also. And John Quick from Nikiski, what's going on in Nikiski today? You can give us a shout out for our show sponsor?
Yeah, so we want to thank Shoshana Gunderstein for Senate for sponsoring the show. She and her team have sponsored the show this last month and this month. We're very excited that she's doing that. She's running for state Senate or U.S. Senate. And you can check out her campaign at gungersteinforsenate.com. Just Google that and she'll pop right up. She's nonpartisan and pro-energy and got a couple things to say about how Joe Biden is not doing a good job. So it's because of her that we're able to spread conservative news through all the nooks and crannies of Alaska. So we're very excited for that. Out here in Nikiski, things are going great. Family and I went to Homer yesterday. Homer was packed. I mean, it was probably the most packed I've seen Homer in years, even before COVID. There was a ridiculous amount of RVs. There was a ridiculous amount of people fishing. There was a ridiculous amount of just everyday tourists walking around on the spit. Now, granted, we were only hanging out on the spit, but it was as packed, if not more packed than I've ever seen it before. So if that's a sign of, is tourism back in Alaska? Tourism is back in Alaska, at least on the Homer spit. So kudos to all the folks in Homer that revolve around the tourism industry, I bet. And I hope that your businesses are doing well. A quick update. Folks have been asking, even though we've done stories on it, I get asked just on my, whether it's on Facebook, I see comments or people send me a message. Is there any update on the stuff that happened in Soldotna with the drag queen stuff? There was a drag queen show at a public park that was identified and marketed as a family-friendly kids program. And really the latest update is that the city of Soldotna showed up in droves at the last city of Soldotna city council meeting and voiced their concerns, rightfully so. And so kudos to folks in Soldotna that did that and that were respectful in the process. I think it's very important to show up and be respectful and not scream and yell at folks, but just state your case and your facts and how you feel about something. And I think a lot of folks did that. Now, unfortunately, it pretty much fell on deaf ears as one of the city council members, and I'm paraphrasing, said, basically, if you don't like this, go to another park. So I don't see much changing with the city of Soldotna. If I were them, I would take a slice and a humble pie and a lesson in humility. A very simple, oh, we're sorry about that, we'll try to do better next time, would have alleviated 99% of all this. Unfortunately, they refuse to do that, and they do the opposite of that, in fact. And so I think you'll see this continue, city of Soldotna. You'll see people show up. You'll see people get organized. And really, it all could have been stopped with a little bit of humility. And unfortunately, that again, that has been met with the opposite of that from the city of Soldotna. So, lesson to you, and hopefully you learned something along the way.
Well, John, those the drag queens were brought in from Anchorage. So I'm sorry, it's one of our little exports that we have up here, and unfortunately, they were not giving a family-friendly show. It was not. These were not fully clothed drag queens. These were very scantily clad and provocative drag queens. There was some footage that we pulled and we were able to publish that showed that one of the drag queens followed a girl into the women's restroom there at the park. And so you're really having some issues there. And I'm really sorry that we exported our drag queens to you, but Soldotna, you just need to do better. You don't need to be like Anchorage. If you really want to have the kind of strife that we have politically in Anchorage, just keep going down that path, because the public will rise up just like they have in Anchorage. And Anchorage, of course, is just become it's just become so contentious because our leftist assembly here is so far to the extreme that the public reacts. The public probably wouldn't react if they were slightly left of center, but they are just extremists on the assembly. So don't be like Anchorage, or you'll just have the kind of unhappiness that we have up here. Well, John, we have 22 days until the election, and that will be the special election so that we can determine who will fill out the rest of Don Young's seat. And that's the special general election. And that's on August 16th. That's going to be on the reverse side of your primary ballot. So you've got your regular primary ballot and you flip it over, and it's going to be a ranked choice general election. It'll be the first time that we have to experiment with this crazy ranked choice voting. We're supposed to have 4 choices, but of course we only have 3 because the whole system is so screwed up. Thank you, Scott Kendall, for screwing up our elections. And but right now we're 7 days away from when special the special needs voting, in-person voting starts. And so in 7 days, people are going to be able to start voting if they want to in person. So this is really coming at us fast. We're really 3 weeks away from the end of the regular primary, and we won't know right away who's going to fill out this seat for Don Young, John, because with this ranked choice voting, it could be very close. And if it's very close, they're going to have to wait for votes to come in from overseas or from out of state or from wherever, the vote that'll be done by mail. Now, this is an in-person election, but those who want to vote absentee can still request a ballot and get that sent to them. And that has always been the case. So if it's very close, we might not know for a few days. They're going to count some of the ballots on election night, which is August 16th. And then they'll count some more the next day and some more the next day. So we might not know until the end of August exactly where we're at with this. But it's all coming at us fast, 3 weeks away. And on our top stories today, John, last night I wrote a story about this crazy Bill Walker accusation that there was some sort of loyalty pledge in the Dunleavy administration when it took over, that it was forcing people to sign a loyalty pledge. Now, this started, 4 years ago. It was the most ridiculous accusation ever, that if you wanted to stay on with the Dunleavy administration, you would have to sign a loyalty pledge. Well, we pulled the letter that the Dunleavy transition team, and they were not even in office yet. They were just working on the transition from the time you're elected until the time you take over office. There's a transition period where you're able to sort of go in and set up office and start moving on your transition things together. And the letter that they sent was almost identical to the letter that the Walker administration sent in 2014 when they took over from the Parnell administration. So we pulled that letter too. And that letter is also posted. So we've got both of those posted on the front page of mustreadalaska.com. And you will see that Bruce Botello, who was the head of the transition team for Bill Walker, sent a letter to all the employees saying, please submit your resignation, and we may keep you on if we want to. And then we looked at the letter that Dunleavy sent, and it's the same letter. It's the same letter. Very, very small differences. The one difference I will say in the Dunleavy letter, it was a little bit more gracious. Now, Bruce Botelho, when he was the transition chair, and I didn't get this in the story because it's just in the weeds, quite honestly. When he was a transition lead for Bill Walker, he went deep into the Parnell administration, and anybody who was in an appointed position, an executive appointed position, so it'd be exempt from union protection. Anybody who had anything to do with politics at all was let go. Bruce Botelho knew to clean house all the way down. He went as far as anybody had ever gone to get rid of anybody who was associated with Parnell. Well, that's the same thing that Tuckerman Babcock did. They went very far down, and they said, anybody who's appointed, we're just sending the same letter to everybody. Anybody who's in an exempt position gets the same letter. And I don't understand to this day, John, why they called it a loyalty pledge. If you go to Must Read Alaska and read the two letters, I think that the Dunleavy letter was just a little bit more gracious and a little bit more inviting for people who wanted to stay. They were not as savage. Bruce Botelho, he did scorched earth on the Parnell administration because the Democrats know they've got to clean the house of all Republicans when they take over. And, Bruce Botelho was the transition chair and is, one of the leading Democrats in the state. He's our former, I think he was our attorney general for a while. He was the mayor of Juneau. He's basically running the Democratic Party most of the time. So that's a story that I just think is really interesting that people should read, because we're starting to see those ads now. The Walker the Walker camp, the Walker campaign is attacking Dunleavy relentlessly now. They've got a lot of money and they're running attack ads. And the crazy thing is that the Dunleavy administration, I mean the Dunleavy campaign, they're not even reacting. They're not even pushing back at all. It's like a little gnat on the shoulder, just like, leave me alone. But they're not doing anything. So I think it's really interesting that their tactic is to just take the attacks and not worry about it. They must feel really confident, because I think this is the only thing that Walker can do right now, is to attack and to try to erode support.
Yeah, it's you asked the question of how did the story, or why did the story even come about? And it's, to me, I look at it just as simply as a marketing ploy from the left. They latched onto this letter that Dunleavy sent out and put a extremely organized marketing effort, tremendously grassroots initially, 4 years ago, to say that Dunleavy tried to make people send a loyalty pledge. And they were very successful in that marketing effort.
Exactly.
They were very hurt that Walker lost, or, Begich lost. And they were scrambling for things to do about it. And this was one of the things to do about it. And for folks that are listening, I've ran into folks it seems like I run into somebody once a month and we talk about, politics, and this thing gets brought up, the Dunleavy loyalty pledge. And I want folks to know that are listening to this, that it's just a political sham. This thing that you've heard, that Dunleavy's made people sign a loyalty pledge, that if you go to Must Read Alaska right now and look at both the letters, Dunleavy's letter is actually better than Walker's, because it invites people to reapply, or to
invites people to stay
on. It invites people to stay on. Walker's letter did not do that.
So
you have Walker pointing the finger, Walker and his entire camp pointing the finger at Dunleavy for being a horrible boss and making them sign a loyalty pledge, when he did the exact same thing but worse. And it's totally just, this is where they think that people in Alaska are a bunch of idiots, and folks need to get read up and schooled up on this. And Walker does not think that the average Alaskan is bright enough to figure out he did the exact same thing. So I think there's no better way to show somebody than how you vote. And we'll get a chance to do that here pretty soon.
Well, yeah. So I really encourage everybody to not only take a look at that story, because, don't take my word for it. Just go read the letters. I published them both, and you can look at them side by side and say, is there a loyalty pledge in either of these letters? And the answer is no. And I think most reasonable people will see that. Partisans will find something that they will say, well, aha, here it is. But it's just not there, people. So there's that. The radio and TV attacks. I mean, with Walker, he's got so much money to burn. So he's just burning it up really, really fast, I think. And he knows that he's got to have a good showing. Now, he is going to be on the August 16th ballot. And so will Les Guerra, the Democrat. And so will Dunleavy. And then there's a few other people. There's like Charlie Pierce, there's Chris Kirka. They're all going to be on that ballot. And what Walker would like to see is he would like to erode some of Dunleavy's support. And he'd like it to either go to, Charlie Pierce or Chris Kirka, but he wants to have fewer people voting for Dunleavy so that his percentage will come up a little bit more. Because right now, Walker's at about, I don't know, I'm guessing about 18% of the voters will vote for him. And the thing is, there's going to be enough people on that ballot that it's not going to look real good for him. And it won't really look that great for Dunleavy either in this primary, because what we're dealing with now is a jungle primary where everybody's on the same ballot. It used to be that the Republicans had their own ballot. Now, if you were Republican or not aligned with a party, you could vote that ballot. But if you've got 20 people running for governor, none of them are going to get very much. So Dunleavy's probably only going to get 30% of the vote on this first ballot. What Walker wants to do is to shrink the difference between those two. So he's going to be battering on Dunleavy really hard over the next few weeks. It's going to be sort of an air bombing campaign on that. And I see that John, I see that Charlie Pierce has picked up a couple of endorsements.
Oh yeah, I think I think between now and the primary, you'll see Charlie Pierce, Mayor Pierce, pick up steam. He just picked up an endorsement from Laura Reinbold, which I think is kind of a shot in the bow to the Dunleavy campaign, because Laura was very critical of Governor Dunleavy during the whole COVID thing, and is kind of lives in his neck of the woods. And now Mayor Pierce has got a endorsement from a senator in Dunleavy's neck of the woods, which is for super voters, that's a big deal. And then I think even more importantly, Mayor Pierce got a endorsement from Andy Kreiner, which is like the token person for the everyday business owner in Alaska. He, for the folks that either remember or don't remember, Andy Kreiner stuck up to Berkowitz's communist business tactics, which tried to shut down all the businesses, fine all the businesses, send code enforcement people to the businesses, sue all the businesses during COVID. And Andy Kreiner said, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to stay open. He stayed open as long as he could until the fines got outrageous.
Right.
And the whole time, Andy Kreiner was all but begging the governor to do something, and the governor refused to get involved in local politics. And so I think you have a situation, we can get into the weeds of why a governor wouldn't want to get involved in local politics, but at the end of the day, business owners felt forgotten about. They felt left behind. They felt left behind. They felt forgotten about from a governor that was supposed to stick up for them. And so you have Andy Kreiner endorsing Mayor Pierce, and that's going to bring a lot of everyday Joe votes with it. And I think if I'm in the Dunleavy camp, I might want to wake up and smell the flowers here and figure out a way to combat some of this, because Mayor Pierce is probably going to be on a warpath and do whatever he can to get as much votes for the primary.
Right. And that's the Walker strategy, is to get more votes for Charlie Pierce as well, because they want to erode the support for Dunleavy in this primary. They want to make it look like he's got less support. So they'd like to see more conservatives, if they're not going to vote for Bill Walker, then vote for Charlie Pierce, and whatever it takes to erode the support. That's what they're going to be doing. But, I look at this and I think, so Laura Reinbold, she's got her own tribe of people, and they're not just in her district. Across the state, she's got fans. She's got a fan base. Now, it's not enough for Laura. She doesn't have a big enough fan base to actually run for governor herself, because she does represent, a really, almost super libertarian kind of viewpoint. But she is, in many ways, a hero to people, because she refused to wear a mask on board airplanes, and it cost her a lot politically. But she really just felt that there was something that it was illegal to require people to wear masks. And there's a lot of people who really supported her and felt that she was a champion for them, that she took one for the team. Andy Kreiner is the same kind of person. He is a working class hero in the state. I mean, in Anchorage, he is a hero to conservatives, because this is a guy who stood up to Ethan Berkowitz, who sent in the code enforcers. Remember, during COVID, shut down all the restaurants and sent code enforcers in. Andy said, "I'm going to stay open," and then he was taking like $15,000 fines a day, and finally he had to shut down because he really couldn't afford it. But he made national news. I think he was on Fox News. I mean, people looked at him and said, "That's what we need. We need people fighting." And I think for our governor, he missed an opportunity to stand up for the working men and women in the private sector. Because remember, during COVID, our government workers, they never lost a day of work. In fact, a lot of them got to go home and work with their dogs snuggling on their laps, and their cats, crawling all over their keyboards. They got to stay home and work. They got to take their paychecks. They banked a lot of money, because it actually costs money to go to work, costs gas money, and you've got to get a wardrobe, and you eat your lunches out and stuff. But if you're staying home, you're probably saving a ton of money. So actually, government workers came out pretty good on the COVID thing. The private sector is still trying to catch up, and my heart goes out to people in the private sector. And I was thrilled when you said that people in Homer are just, there was a lot of visitors down there, because those tourism businesses on the Spit, there's no amount of government money that really can make them whole. All that PPP money, it's just not enough. It was barely enough for some of them to survive. And a lot of them haven't survived. A lot of businesses have gone under. So Andy Kreiner is kind of my hero, your hero. And so for him to come out and support Charlie Pierce, who kept the Kenai open, he stood up for small businesses.
Yeah, he was the guy that refused to back down from the crazy COVID policies that were being jammed down our throat at the federal level and even at the state level in some regards. I remember folks telling me that it's harder to fly into Anchorage and figure out all the crazy COVID process than it is in some other country that is on lockdown.
Yeah.
And Mayor Pierce stood up for small businesses every day of the week. He took so much flack for it. He also was very vocal and open about different sort of medicines that people could potentially use, and got a ton of flack for it, but didn't care. And so he's the kind of guy that's going to do what he thinks is right. And sometimes it's not going to be politically correct, but he doesn't really care, because he's got a big heart. And he, I'm a little biased. He's a friend of mine, but he really cares about the people. He doesn't really care. He doesn't really like being a politician. He just wants to do the right thing, and he thinks this state can be run better. So
yeah, I'm a big Charlie Pierce fan for all those reasons, because I watched him and how he governed the Kenai, and he kept saying, "We're open for business. We are not going to shut people down. We're not going to lock down." And he kept the borough open as he was allowed to keep it. He kept it open, and the businesses on the Kenai, they didn't shut down.
Yeah, he took. I mean, the local papers here just
they
ate him alive.
They
mean, they just ate him alive, and he could have cared less. And he just kept going and kept doing what he thought was right. And I think that's the kind of if Dunleavy ends up winning again, that's one of the things I think hopefully that we can see in this next term is people just want to know that you got their back. They don't care about you creating 47 different policies about getting their back. They just want to physically know that you have their back. And sometimes it takes showing up and making statements and just being there. It's not that you have to create bills or you can only show up if you have the authority to make a change. No, just show up, be
Yeah.
a nice person, and have people's backs. And I think that's what Mayor Pierce does, and does really well.
I know that Mayor Pierce didn't probably come up and sit down at the counter at Kreiner's Diner and have lunch or anything, but that's the kind of thing you would want this governor to do, for Dunleavy to go and show up and sit down and have lunch at a place that was standing up for the right thing. So yeah, we're kind of looking for a little bit more courage in our leaders, and it's interesting to see that Laura Reinbold and Andy Kreiner are deciding that Charlie Pierce is the guy who's got the courage to do the job. Speaking of endorsements, we are starting to see a lot of endorsements come out, and endorsements are important. Everything's important when you're running a campaign. They say signs aren't important. Signs are important. Door knocking is important. TV and radio ads are important, and flyers are important, and endorsements are important. They're all part of the thing. I was very interested to see that our one of our business leaders, Jim Jansen, endorsed Bill Walker, because this is Jim Jansen who used to endorse Mike Dunleavy, and now has flipped and endorsed Bill Walker. And Bill Walker, of course, was last time around he was a candidate who was manufactured by the Democrats. He put together a partnership with Democrat Byron Malott, and then they were endorsed by the Democrats, and they ran essentially as they were the Democratic Party's candidates. And so it's fascinating that Jim Jansen, who's a pretty big business leader, Linden Transfer and all that here in Anchorage, all over Alaska, historic company, has decided to back Bill Walker. That is a pretty big loss, I think, for Dunleavy, and I think that he should be paying attention to that. There was a meeting of the State Central Committee over the weekend on Saturday, and this is of the Republican Party. I didn't go because I was in travel status this weekend, but there were a number of people who came forward looking for endorsements. One of them was Chris Kirka, who's running for governor, and he did not get the endorsement of the State Central Committee for governor. So he left without that. I mean, actually, he wasn't there. I think he was down in Valdez. His running mate, Paul Huper, who's running for lieutenant governor with him, has broken his leg, and he's laid up right now, and he won't be campaigning for a few weeks till he can kind of start hobbling around. So really, Chris Kirk is kind of on his own, and looking at his quarterly, at his 30-day report, it looks to me like Chris is kind of running out of money, and he's sort of run through his funds. He's running out of money. His running mate has a broken leg, and things just a little bit tough for him over there. And now he has not gotten an endorsement from the Republicans. They fail to appreciate some of the things that he has done that are, maybe questionable. But he's running.
I was surprised to even try to get an endorsement, because he's been very critical of the party. And I know that it was probably one of his, supporters that asked for the endorsement, but I was surprised that he would even ask, because he has been really nothing but critical of the party since he's started to run for governor.
Yeah, and in his 30-day report, it looks like he's down to about $2,000. So this is tough for him. Now, there was some interesting things that happened at the State Central Committee meeting. There was a group down in Ketchikan, the Ketchikan district leaders. They had a resolution to censure Sarah Palin from the party because of the things that she did, where she supported Bill Walker for governor, where she asked Ted Stevens to resign, where she took the money that was designated for the Ketchikan bridge to the airport, and she called that a bridge to nowhere. She took that money and spent it elsewhere. The Ketchikan people in the party were really unhappy with her, and they brought forward a resolution to have the party censure her. That ended up getting tabled this weekend. It didn't get voted on, didn't get voted up, didn't get voted down. It ended up getting tabled. So Sarah Palin has scooted by on that. But some other endorsements, she did not get endorsed by the party for Congress either. She didn't get that. They didn't have anybody bring that forward. Nobody has asked the party to endorse her. So I guess they figured out that wasn't going to happen. But interestingly enough, Joe Wright, who's running for Senate seat L, which is the Eagle River seat that has opened up with redistricting, Joe Wright was endorsed for that seat, and that was really a good thing for him. I think it's interesting that Kelly Merrick, who is the representative for that area, she's also running for Senate seat L, and she was not endorsed. In fact, she was not only not endorsed, she was actually censured by the party because, again, she has basically aligned herself with Democrats and against the Republicans. And so here she is running for a Senate seat in her own home district there up in Eagle River, and she has been censured by her party. So we've always known that Kelly Merrick was sort of just a Republican in name only because it's sort of a matter of convenience for her. But now she is really out of step with her. But this is the second time she's been censured by the party. The party censured her before. Then when that expired with the new election coming up, they've censured her again. They really don't like her. They're done with her. So that was kind of interesting. I know we're out of time. Are there any other things that we ought to cover? Can I just mention one more thing before we go? Senator Mike Shower, who's running for his Senate seat again, he was endorsed by the party over the weekend, but he also picked up another great endorsement. He got endorsed by Anchorage Mayor Dave Bronson. So I'll be putting a little story up about that today. Now, if you're a supporter of Must Read Alaska, I just want to thank you guys so much. It just makes it possible for us to stand up for what's right in Alaska. And we'd like to thank, again, Shoshana Gungerstein for U.S. Senate for sponsoring the Must Read Alaska show. And thank you, Shoshana. Check out her campaign at gungersteinforsenate.com, where she talks about what her platform is and how she is an independent and nonpartisan candidate for Senate. If you'd like to support the conservative side of the news in Alaska, well, the donate button's on the right-hand side of the page. We really do appreciate it. There's a lot of running costs to this operation, and you help us keep the lights on the right side of the news. So, John, you've got the podcast the rest of the week. I'll maybe check in with you on Friday, where I've got a guest that I'm trying to queue up for you on Friday, and or for me on Friday, and it'd be Nick Begich. I'm hoping that he'll come on the show. We're trying to get him on today, but he's just getting back from a trip to Deltona and Fairbanks, and I guess he'll be on the show if you can work him in on Friday.
Yeah, the exciting guest this week, we got Mayor Dave Bronson tomorrow, which is going to be exciting. We have the Alaska Travel Girl on Wednesday.
She's my favorite.
And then we have Diane Kaplan, the CEO of Rasmussen Foundation, on Thursday. So that'll be exciting.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, if you could fit me in on Friday, that'd be great. You're a busy man.
Yeah, it's going to be a good week for our podcast.
Well, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time for Must Read Alaska.